Hello. We're going to work on homework 1C, which is communication with our markdown. Little disclaimer here, I don't prefer our markdown as my primary way of writing documents, but it is really useful that R gives us this facility that we can connect our data directly to a document output format, and if the underlying data were to change, we can just hit, let's just re-execute all this, and all the diagrams and all the references in the document, everything executes and updates, and all the new diagrams are in place. So that's extremely useful in many situations. So if you're writing a document that is likely to constantly be changing because your underlying data sets are changing, this is a tool to seriously consider. It's very, very useful. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is pull up our studio. And I'm going to just pull up my homework 1B script, which we actually basically finished in the last video. So this is essentially what we finished creating in homework 2, or at least in your case, you will be pulling up homework 2. And you should just source this to make sure it does what you think it does, and make sure you haven't introduced any errors in the process of writing. Source with echo will generate all the diagrams in your plots window, and if you have some errors, it's okay, but you got to know where they are, because you want to make sure that any errors that you generated are not going to propagate into the next level of the document. Okay, so that basically did what I expected, and anything worse than that I'll have to deal with at the next stage. Okay, now we need to call a library called knitter. If you type this and you don't get just a silent execution of this, if it yells at you, then you're going to have to install it. But you should not have to install it, but just double check that. Okay, now before we convert our R script, we need to break our work into what are called chunks. So what you can see here is a whole bunch of diagrams, and in here you have a whole bunch of other output. What's going to happen is we're going to merge all that into a single flowing document, and in between these graphics or results, you need to make space for yourself to put words. So think about this. When you wrote your R markdown, you used a pound symbol to put comments in your code. So the default behavior was everything you wrote was intended for R to execute unless you put a pound sign in front of it, in which case you told R, ignore this. You're going to flip this around in your mind, and now we're going to assume that everything you write is just part of your document that you're writing, and you're actually going to mark off where the R code is in a special place so that your document knows when to execute the R chunks. Okay? So you have to kind of twist your head around a little bit. Now, you can do this manually, but it's really, really painful. So what we're going to do is we're going to simply put markers that tell you where the chunks are going to break. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you, put a pound followed by a plus. That's our special marker. So R doesn't see that at all. When you're just in a .r file, that doesn't mean anything. It's just a comment. But it's going to turn into something special. So I don't think you used pound plus in any of your comments, but if you did, at this point you're going to change that. Okay, so this is now a special reserved thing, and you're going to put this between any results that you might like. I want to group those 4 things together, so it's okay, but anything I don't want to group together, then I'm going to put these little markers to say I'm going to break up my chunks. I'm going to just pause the video briefly so I can do that. Okay, I'm just going to continue the recording now. Notice I actually just copied this little bit and said copy or Control C, so that I can just go Control V and then every so often dump these in. Actually, I shouldn't have 2 right next to each other, but anytime I want Now, obviously, I'm doing this on the exercise on the lecture part of last week's homework, but you're going to do this on your actual homework. You're going to just take everything that's a separate plot or a separate result and separate everything off. Okay, you don't need the last one. So these are separators between blocks. There you go. Okay, so I just saved this, although it was probably not wise. I probably should have saved it under a different name. Whatever, it's okay. Don't worry about it if you do the same thing I did. But anyway, you might want to save it under a different name just so that your old one is intact. Okay. Now what you're going to do is you're going to go through and remove some things which are going to become very annoying if we don't remove them. Every time you had like a question mark and you were looking up for some help, working hours, I want to get rid of this. So I'm either going to pound this away or I'm going to delete it. View, get rid of view. And I'm going to tell you something. I said yesterday, last week, whatever, I didn't know what this meant. And it was kind of frustrating to me. But I actually have an answer for you, and I will tell you what it means. Well, since I already sourced my file, I can't do that. But I can do it on a different data set. So there's a data type called promise. There's a data sets. Nope. Okay, I'm going to have to go look up a new data set. So let me just pause this for a second. Okay, the command I was trying to remember was data sets. There we go. So I just want to pick any data set in here. Let's say Euro, okay? What does the data command do? What it does is it should allow me to then see, this is actually what happens. It calls Euro into my working zone, like my working environment, but it calls it as a promise, which is really weird, which means it kind of didn't really do anything. But it just sort of promised me that that data set is there, it's available for me, and until I actually touch it in some way, I can't really see it. But if I say view, then it brings it up, and you might see down here, now it actually seems to exist in memory. So the point of when you say data and you put the name of the data set in, it doesn't bring it into working memory, but it kind of acts like it did. So you don't, strictly speaking, have to do that. And that's why I was kind of annoyed by the command, because I was literally just copying what Hadley Wickham did in his tutorial, and I'm like, why do we do this anyway? Why did we type this in? And that's why, because it kind of promises us that we've typed it in correctly and we know it's there, and then if we need it, it will be available to us. So it's just kind of a little side comment. I wanted to sort of answer that since I sort of raised that question on the last video. Okay, so I've gone through and put these little pound pluses all throughout my document. And what else do I want to remove? I want to remove anytime I looked up anything like question mark, anything. So I'm going to go edit, replace, find and replace, find question mark. So did I use a question mark? Only those two places. So I'm reassured that those are the only two places the question marks exist. I didn't do a question mark and then ask for a geom or a stat or anything like that. So that makes me happy. Okay, so I've washed out anything that I think is going to be annoying. I've washed out the views, hopefully. Let me just look for view. See if I did any views. No, no more views. Okay, so I've commented out all that stuff. Now I'm ready to go to the next step, which is step 5. Okay, we're going to only convert from R script to R Markdown, but the knitter package itself is extremely versatile, and you can convert from lots of different data type file types into lots of different file types. So please be aware that that's why you have to call so many different options when you type knitter. So I'm going to do knitter, spin. It's like you're spinning yarn. And what I've written in the instructions is file name. So you want homework 1b underscore script.r, and then you're going to say false format equals quotes RMD. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. It's claiming it can't find the directory. Okay, I didn't expect that. Let me double check to make sure I typed this correctly. I did not type anything incorrectly. The file is right there, so I really have no idea. I'm going to try closing this down and starting up again, because what actually happened is that I'm in the wrong directory. And it's okay. All the work I did is fine. I just want to make sure that this thing isn't red. Then I can go ahead and close this down. Hopefully this won't happen to you. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm literally going to the directory where the document is stored. So if you have this problem, then you do the same thing to fix it. There's a much more complicated way to fix this problem, but it's much easier to just close down R and reopen it by clicking on the original document. Open with R. Hello. Like what are you thinking? Come on. Like, my computer is kind of stupid sometimes. All right, now I can go ahead and pull up this this command. I still have to do the library command. So let me just redo that again. I'm doing library knitter. What? Sometimes tab complete is just really annoying. Here we go. This should work. There we go. Now I want to spin this guy. Now the file name should work. And then I hold my breath because I want this to work. Yay! It worked. Okay, now we have created the file we wanted. Now I have to find it and open it. It's going to be in the same directory. And it's right here, and I'm going to open it. Right now, these two files contain identical R content. Okay, so that's what happened so far. What you should notice is that there's separators that we created. Every one of those separators turned into a new chunk. Let just scroll down and see what I mean by chunk. Okay, so this whole piece is called a chunk. All right, and now I have another chunk. Chunky, chunky, chunk. Okay, and everything that was a comment before is still a comment because everything inside here is R code. And everything in between here is not R code. Okay, so this is not R code here. This is R code here. Although I'm inside a comment now, so that's why. Okay, so we're going to try just knitting to a PDF, and it's going to make a huge mess, and that's okay. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to say knit, and by the way, you really ought to knit to an HTML and to a Word document also, but do that on your own time. But it's fun and it's very similar to what we're doing, so you can just do that on your own and see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and knit to PDF, and I'm going to hold my breath because if something bad happens, I'm going to have to go and fix my code. But if we did everything correctly and the code worked as an R script, it should work as an R Markdown script. That should just work. So if you have any trouble with this stage, go back and rerun your R script. Okay, it just said new table is not found. So I probably have a mistake in my code that I ignored at a previous stage. I'm at line 207, so let me see what's going on here. I'm happy because it got most of the way through, and it's probably something that's not a big deal. This is the same code that I messed up with the last video, I forgot to actually define what the new table was. So let me just pause the video and put that line of code back in. Okay, so the line that was missing out of my code was new table. I had to define it. Okay, so that's what was missing. So hopefully this will take care of the problem. And I'm going to go back and knit to a PDF again. Notice it's counting off the chunks. Chunk 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's good. And you can see the progress over here. So when you get pretty far through your document before it bails on you, that's a good sign. If you get past halfway, don't worry. You'll be able to figure it out. You just have to figure out what was wrong with the code, fix it. And that's why we want to start with a working R script. Because if the R script works, then this thing should just work out of the box. Now, I want you to see what a horrible mess we've made. However, I want you to be proud that we have, in fact, created a totally bona fide PDF file that you can share with the world. And like, there's all sorts of stuff here. Notice that you're going to get your comments back if you want the comments, and you're going to get your code. But something that's really annoying is notice that this comment here, this code that says that you colored it by occupation, it's true, but then the graphic ends up on the next page. And that I find really, really annoying. And I'm going to ask you to control for that. And I'll show you some things you can do to massage this. Okay, so actually in your write-up, I'm not going to require you to show your code to your audience or to your readers. Okay, so we're going to be able to hide all that. You can selectively display the code you want, but there's a couple lines where I'm going to ask you to show the code, and after that it'll be at your discretion. Okay, so one thing you got to know when you knit to a PDF, or if you prefer the language compiled to a PDF, you have to actually close the PDF before you knit it a second time. Okay, this is sort of a quirk about RStudio and how it relates to your PDF. It will not let you update a PDF that you're in the process of reading. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so we're gonna, oh yeah, I wanted to tell you something else. So you should notice that this here is R code. So this whole chunk here is R code. And so what you're probably thinking, if you're thinking ahead a little bit, is you're thinking, wait, if that's R code, could I stick Python in there? And the answer is yes. And you can actually share variables between your R and your Python, and it's really cool, and we're not going to do it. But I did want those of you who have programmed in other languages, yes, this is actually why we do it this way, because we can execute some stuff in R, execute some stuff in Python, and there's other languages, like I don't know what other languages you might want to use, but they exist, and you can use them. And so that's all good to know. Okay, next thing I want you to know is that there's a way to hide all this output. I really don't like all this output, and so for me, I'm just going to hide all of it, and then for those blocks where I want to reveal it, then I'll reveal it selectively, okay? Because I find all this output just annoying. Okay, so I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say edit, replace, and find. So I'm going to make sure my mouse is above the first block. Okay, replace and find. I'm going to replace and find these three back quotes, curly R space curly, and I'm going to watch to make sure, in this case line 7, I've highlighted an example that of a start of a block, and I'm going to replace it with a similar block, but this time I'm going to get rid of a whole bunch of stuff. Echo equals false, message equals false, error equals false, warning equals false. So it just shuts up everything. And it's going to do this for all my chunks, 32 chunks. They've all been replaced. And just want to show you, Control S, I'm going to knit to a PDF and show you what happens now. And you should see it's very silent. All you're going to see is a whole bunch of graphics. Yeah, you're not going to see anything but graphics, I guess. Why did it halt? That wasn't nice. Well, I guess I'm only being honest. Sometimes this happens. You can't use macro parameter character in math mode. I didn't even know I was in math mode. So they say I'm in line 91. I made a mistake. So let's go see what's happening in line 91. It's probably just a stray character. Where am I? I have absolutely no idea what it's asking me about. Mean working hours is not line 91. What is going on here? Is it just lying to me? This doesn't seem right. It should be a different color. Oh, all right, fine. I made a huge mistake. It is totally my fault. Do you see I didn't put this in here? Oh, my bad. So, I'm going to do another replace R. Replace all. Replace all these guys with ding, ding, ding. You guys probably all saw that mistake, didn't you? I'm going to put my mouse back up here and do a replace all. Replace. I'm going to make a mess out of my document, aren't I? Replace all. Did this work? Why is this not happening? I don't want to go through and have to do this manually. That's why I did a replace all. Find ding, 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 replace with ding, 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 replace all. There you go. I do have to go back and check the ones at the top and make sure I don't have 4. Yeah, of course I had to do that to me. So I'm going to make sure I don't have any 4s because it did 32 chunks and I know I have 32 chunks, so the ones I did manually are going to be wrong. Okay, let me try this. I'm sorry, not sorry that happened, because I want to show you that mistakes happen and you can fix them. So I'm going to now try to knit to a PDF again. Now notice you're counting up the chunks and it says echo low G false, message low G false, error low G false, warning low G false. Those are all those flags we put in that says false, 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 because we are suppressing all those outputs so that we have a silent document. And yay, we made it through this time, and now we can look at our beautiful document and see. Notice it says not our code here, okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, that means that we managed to get rid of all of our output other than our pictures. That's what we wanted. Okay, now there's some other nuisance that may or may not happen on your system. Notice that it's trying to put 2 pictures side by side. We will get rid of that problem very soon. It may or may not happen for you. It's happening because my blocks are right next to each other, rather my chunks. So I'm going to just I'm on page 10. I'm going to fix this and I'm going to recompile to show you that we can get rid of this problem by the following mechanism. Okay, so look at histogram of, where's the histogram? I gotta find my histogram. I'm gonna pause this for a second while I look for my histogram. Okay, I just used a search command and typed hist, and what do you know? I found my histogram. And so what's happening is this is all in one block together, so I wasn't very wise. And now what I want to do is I actually want to split this into another chunk. And so I want to just grab this, all this stuff here. And I'm going to put it up above. Right here. All right, and just for safe measure, for safekeeping, I'm going to just add some white space between my chunks because sometimes it matters. And I'm going to try knitting to a PDF again. Double check that you've closed your PDF before you try to knit again. And so now we should see on page 10, we should not have those two pictures right next to each other again. Okay? Okay, so here's my histogram, and then my other picture is no longer beside it. But look, we got to do the same thing again. Okay, well, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, in this case, they're not in the same block, so I probably just need to put spaces between these blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and knit this again. I keep pausing because I don't need you to watch it compile each time. Okay, so now these are all separated like we expected. And we go through the whole document. Anywhere, again, where this happens, I'm not going to sit here on the video and do it, but anytime you have side-by-side images, all you have to do is insert some space between your blocks. And some of this will just happen naturally as you're working through your document, but that's what's controlling it. Just put spaces between your blocks, between your chunks, and you will get better alignment. Okay? Another thing is you can change the width of your figures. That is optional. I explained that in the homework. Okay, next we're going to create a heading for your paper. And you know, you can already start figuring out what you want to thin out, but there's a whole list of requirements, so maybe you don't want to thin them out right away, but you don't have to have two similar things. So kind of pick which things you want to present. So up here in this section is known as the YAML section. How do you spell that? I'm going to just, it's YAML. If you want to Google that or figure out more about this area is called the YAML. YAML stands for YAML Ain't Markup Language. So you can be up here. If I'm going to add more things, I'm going to create a title up here. You have to make sure your mouse is all the way over. Like, make sure that you're not indented or this isn't going to work. You have to make sure you're all the way over. Title, colon, and put it in quotes. That's kind of annoying that you have to put it in quotes, but well, you do. So you put your anything you need for your homework heading. If you want to put a footnote on your title, it's called thanks. So I'm going to do it first just so you can see it, and then I'm going to get rid of it. No thanks. Well, because I'm not actually using a thanks. Author. Notice it just turned blue when I spelled it right. And it turns green when I finish writing my string. Abstract. You will be told what to write in your abstract. This is an abstract. Okay, but you need to, you can make your abstract as long as you want, but do not hit return in the middle. So if I go like this, then it's not going to work. You have to make the abstract one single line of writing, and then when it knits, it will turn it into a paragraph for you. So don't worry about it, what it looks like on the screen here, because that's not your problem, that's the knitter's problem. Okay, date is really cool. It's going to insert its own date, but you got to be really careful about this. You put a single quote or a double quote, but it has to match on the other side. Back quote R, because you're going to do a piece of R code, a little bit of R code. You're going to format the system time. So as long as the clock on your computer is right, you're going to get the day, the month, the year, and back quote. And then if you used a single quote, finish it with a single quote. If you used a double quote, finish it with a double quote. As soon as you're done writing your header, you're going to knit it again just to make sure your header turned out. It should be very beautiful. I'm going to pause this again. Okay, so back to the start of our document. We're looking at the top of our document, and I just wanted to show you if there's my name, the date is automatic. If you have thanks, if you've used thanks, it'll show up as a star, and then you'll have a footnote on page 1. I'm going to get rid of that. I just wanted to show you how to use it in case you decided you could use that. For example, you could use it to put your email address down or something like that. I mean, that's kind of cheesy, but because it's not what it's for. But you can use it for whatever you need to use it for if you're creating a document for another purpose. Okay, so this is the only thing that's changed, is this header is now present. Okay, so then we can continue on to our next objective. I'm now going to get rid of my thanks line because I don't really need it. Okay. You should start to exert control over your paging, because as you noticed, if you just let our Markdown do whatever it wants, it'll spit out your code, and then it'll do a page break, and then your beautiful diagram that was generated from the code will be on the next page. It is beyond me why it works this way. It is ridiculous. But let's say that you want to show some code and you want to show it near your output. That's a reasonable thing to want. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, sorry, I'm going to move this down here. So maybe I'm going along and I say, I want to show my users how to do this thing. Okay, I want echo to be true. I want to show everything here. So I'm just going to actually get rid of all these falses and see what happens here. Here I'm going to describe. Here I describe my ggplot for X is hours. Don't write it like this in your document. I'm just doing this so I make sure I align them correctly. Okay, so I'm going to save this and I'm going to knit it again and see what happens. See where that comment goes. Okay, so I'm going to look and see what happened. So what it did is it plotted this, it gave me it echoed out the everything. And this one worked. This was fine, and I'm verifying that this is what I want. But I noticed that my #7 is here, and I don't really like that, so now I'm going to go back and adjust that part of the document and say, I don't really like that. It showed up. It didn't show up when I did a whole bunch of falses in there, but I don't know exactly which flag was controlling that, so I'll just delete it. Okay, so now I have what I want. In this particular instance, I feel like telling my audience or my readers what R command I ran that created this graphic, and then I'm going to talk about it. Now, if I want to be absolutely sure that nothing weird happens, I can put a page break here, or I can use a new page. Page break or new page work slightly differently, but for our purposes, assume they're identical. Okay, so I can do this to make sure that our Markdown doesn't try to glue another diagram after my discussion. So that's just how you can exert control over your pages if you need to. Okay, I also want to show you how to use variables as literals. So let's see. Where's the first time I start using these things? What about here? Okay, maybe maybe I want to give this thing a name. My mean is this. There we go. So rather than actually just executing this expression, I'm going to save off the expression so that I can use it, and I want to talk about it after I execute it. So I can say my mean is, and then I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to say my mean. It means I want to bring something directly out of R. So that means inside this tiny little zone, I am expressing R code. Okay, it's kind of cute. It's inline R code. And I happen to know that the area of a circle with radius 9 is 9 times 9 times pi, because I just don't feel like calculating it, and I also, maybe I forgot what pi was, and I don't care. I don't want to calculate it. Let R calculate it. So you can either invoke variables that you've already calculated, or you can just do something on the fly that you don't feel like calculating. And so I'm going to go ahead and Control S to save this, and I'm going to go ahead and knit this again to show you what happens. Okay, it's done. So I'm going to see if I can figure out where I did that. My mean is 296.87398. I happen to know the area of a circle with radius 9 is 24 point blah blah blah. And you may say, well, that looks disgusting, and while I'm here, actually I don't want to see all this nonsense garbage here. I'm like, okay, we can fix all that. Let's fix all that. This is your document and you want to fix all that. So if you just execute this, like plain old vanilla execute something, it's going to spit out that result, because the computer thinks, why would you calculate that if you didn't want to see it? But if you want to hide that, you have a couple options. You could just comment these guys out if you don't want to see them at all, or if you wanted to save it, you could just save it in case you want to use it later. Either way, it's going to hide that. So that's useful to know. And I actually want to hide all this stuff here. This is the stuff that's causing, actually all this stuff up here is causing a mess. I'm gonna just delete these guys right now because I don't really need to see that, and when I knit to a PDF, it's gonna clear out the memory anyway. So that's okay, I can get rid of that now. Also, I wanted to show you what about formatting your results, because your results kind of look stupid sometimes, right? We don't really want it to look stupid. So I don't know why this is. So this, what I mean by stupid is I don't like all those digits. So let's fix that. And I'm having trouble with my user interface for some reason. I have no idea why. Well, that's just lovely. Well, let me try saving and knitting and seeing if the problem goes away. Okay, let's see. Well, we made some improvements, and that's going to happen. So this is going to be your document. You're going to just keep working on it. It turns out, for whatever reason, I've got some kind of problem here, so I'm going to have to pause the recording again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just close down R and reopen it again. I'm going to close down RStudio. Okay, and here we are. I'm going to just do one more demo before knitting it again. I don't want R, I want R Markdown, sorry. I want to show you guys how to write $signs and format your output and stuff like that. Okay, so the average income was $sign. So I want you to know that in this zone, like outside of the R code, this is just a $sign, and the dollar is not a special character here. Now I'm going to put an R value inside. So now I got to go and dump some R code in here to figure out what some average income was. So let me see if I have an income I can dump in there. Okay, let me just go up here for a second. Okay. My mean is the average income, and so I'm going to just use that value so you can see it. My mean. The problem is it's not going to be formatted very nicely. So around this, you're going to do a format, okay? But first you're going to round. So let me just sort of build this. You're going to round this value to two digits after the decimal. The problem is if your value ends in like 0.70 or something like that, then you're going to only see 0.7. So that's really annoying. But if you want to force all the digits, then you have to use another command called format. So you're going to format this n small equals 2. So that's a lot of explanation, but once you get it, it should just work. So I'm going to go ahead and knit this. Okay, so back again, and you see now this is formatted correctly. The $sign is literally just a $sign in that environment, and then all that messing around with the formatting and the rounding gave us 296.90, and if we hadn't done the format but just the round, we would have got like 296.9, which is just oh so annoying. So anyway, now you have full control over that part of your output. There's a couple other things I think you can figure out by just reading, which is correlation matrices. That's pretty straightforward. And there are situations where you might want to cast your data into a different type, and that's also in the write-up. So that means, for example, you know, like I'm looking at my data, and let me just go ahead and view my data, and I say, look, you know, this data, you think it's numerical, but I want you to treat it as factors, or I want you to treat it as strings, or I want you to treat, these are strings, but I want you to treat them as numbers. All that is possible. You just have to use as factor, or as numeric, or as string. You can Google this, but be assured that if your data are the way they ought to be, you can easily convert from one format or one data type to another. So that is fine. There's even a function that takes the number 5 and types it into 5. Like you can even do that in R. But in that case, you'd have to load in another library, which is not a big deal. Okay, your project requirements are that you're going to start, there's going to be, remember I said you can hide everything. Here's the exception. In your variable introduction part, which is right at the top, I do not want you to hide the head, the summary, or the sapply command. They can all be in a block together if you want, in a chunk, or you can put them in 3 separate chunks. That's your choice. But I want everything to be visible so that I can see that you actually did that. Also, I want you to tell me in your abstract what's going on with your data. So that abstract has a special role for this homework assignment. So for example, you're going to take your data set. In my case, here it is, and you type the word class. So everybody types the word class, but your data set name goes right there. And what it's going to do is it's going to tell you that your, well, I shouldn't have gotten rid of this. Okay, so it's going to tell you what all these categories are according to R. So it's going to say hours is integer, income is integer, age is integer, education is integer, so on and so forth. It wrapped around to the next line. Own is integer, mortgage is integer, occupation is factor, unemployment is integer, and so forth. Okay, so it tells you what all that stuff is going on. And so what I want you to do in your abstract is I want you to tell me what your data types are to you. So don't just copy this blindly. I don't want you to say like large farm is logical. I want you to say, or large fam. Large fam means large family, and that's true or false based on a variable I created in the write-up. So make sure that you explain at least the variables that you're going to be using. you should explain, if you have 10 or fewer variables in your data set, explain them all. But if you have a variable set with lots and lots of columns, then I want you to pick any 5 categorical variables to explain and any 5 numerical variables. So like if there's only 3 categoricals and a whole bunch of numericals, explain all the categoricals and at least 5 of the numericals, or vice versa. Okay, so do some explaining about your data set. In the abstract, tell the variable that you feel is most natural. So in this case, child 5 tells how many children are in the family 5 and under. Okay, so it can be treated as a number or a factor, but you're not going to have people with like 17 children 5 and under. So it really makes more sense to deal with this as a factor, okay, even though it's recorded as an integer. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, please ask. That's what we're here for. This process of determining what data types are is a very human process, and the computer can give us some help, but at the end of the day, you have to decide how you're treating your variables. Okay? In your data set, so working hours, okay, I need to do library ec_dat, and then I can do this thing. Okay. If I pull up this information about my data set, which you're going to pull up the information about your own data set, you scroll down, you should find more information. So you need to explore this in order to do this write-up. You may not have had to explore it a lot for the last homework, but you're going to need to dig a little deeper, more than likely, in order to have an intelligent write-up for homework 1C. Okay? And then there's all the requirements are listed, bullet points 15 through the end of the document. Okay? All your project requirements. So it should be a document that reads easily. Somebody from outside this course should be able to pick it up and read it and understand what you did. Do not put numbers in your document. Do not say, okay, I'm addressing bullet point 15, bullet point 16. Don't do it that way. You can do it that way initially for your draft, but then before you turn it in, get rid of all those numbers, because it wouldn't flow very nicely. You want your document to flow natively, as if somebody just picked it up and very gently started reading it, and you want to make sure anybody can pick your document up and read it, and they don't know it's an assignment. So write everything in the first person. Say, I decided to work on this data set. It looked interesting. I decided that I was interested in comparing income versus education, for example. Okay, so write things in the first person in a very easy to read fashion, so that your readers are drawn in and don't really know that this was an assignment. Okay? I think that's all I need to tell you for now.